What is something you think the younger generation lacks?
Focus.
Discipline.
Respect.
Self-awareness.
Loyalty.
Nothing. Self-esteem.
They expect everything to be handed to them.
Worth ethic.
Physical, social connection.
Patience.
Our value systems are upside down.
I would say,
I'm sorry to say, but the world is lacking a lot of love. And I think it's the way they're being brought up these days.
What is something that you think the younger generation lacks?
A lot of them don't seem to be seeking the higher power.
Enough self-confidence about themselves, from themselves.
What is something you think the younger generation lacks?
Oh, shit. That's a lot.
God.
Eye contact, personal contact. Unfortunately, the phone, even I'm getting used to that phone with Instagram. I'm starting to look down more.
Well, they follow what they think they should be doing and saying. They don't put so much thought into it to, create new ideas and maybe understand that what people are telling them isn't always right, even if it's older people.
What is something that you think the younger generation lacks?
I think they don't do very much planning. That's kind of from a business perspective.
Not necessarily lacks, but can work on being a little bit more empathetic towards others, more compassion, being more mindful of our elderly.
and I find a definite lack of respect for their elders, which, excuse me, I was young once, and I was never accused of not having respect. I did respect my elders. I was taught that.
Respect for the elders.
They show no respect.
One of the most important aspects of spirituality is an ability to respect seniors, build lasting relationship with each other, and help those who are not so advanced. So it's a mood of gratitude, it's a mood of service that is missing in society.
What is something that you guys think the younger generation lacks? What is something that the younger generation lacks?
That's a hard one, because I think the younger generation is doing so many wonderful things.
One of the things I actually admire is the ability to question the things as they are and to imagine a world that can be better than it is with the kind of values of care and love and unconditional acceptance of ourselves and others.
What is something that you think the younger generation lacks?
Lacks?
Lacks? Maybe trust with our government?
Maybe a sense of history.
A desire to drive. Yeah, well, when I was 16, which was, well, I'm 65 now, so it was a long time ago, but we couldn't wait to get our permits. We were just talking about that, getting our permits and licenses, and now kids, they don't want to drive. They want to stay in the house and play video games.
I don't think they lack. I think there's more choices, and I think that's good and bad, because like breakfast cereals, when there used to be 4, you had 4 choices, and now there's almost too much going on media-wise and choice-wise. So I think unless they're grounded in something that comes from their culture or parents, they spend an awful lot of time trying to decide who they are, what they want to be.
The younger generation lacks
financial literacy,
common sense, history, knowledge,
compassion. Not enough gratefulness and thankfulness for one another and life itself, and how precious life is.
What is something that you think the younger generation lacks?
That's a wonderful question.
But what I see with the younger generation at my work is that they, in my opinion, avoid doing what it takes to get the job done, basically. So they may have some input or whatever they think should happen, but there's more to it. And so I think that really relates to critical thinking skills is what it really boils down to.
Work, able to work. They're lazy.
In my generation, we had to work for everything that we got, and there weren't handouts that people gave us free money and free this. So I think that's part of what the younger generation is lacking.
What is something that you think the younger generation lacks?
That's kind of a trick question, because you don't really want to offend anybody, right?
Understanding of the past, but they're looking ahead. They are looking ahead, so stay tuned. Stay tuned. They're out there.
You know, I think that the younger generation is actually bringing the energy of consciousness that the world needs, actually.
You know, the whole concept of social justice and wokeness has been extended so far that people just go off on a tangent like it's the gospel, and they don't think about all the ramifications that could occur.
I think a lot of hands-on experience. I don't care if it's something household plumbing to doing something in the yard or the garden or the garage.
What is something you think the younger generation lacks?
What do they lack?
Personal development.
A spiritual centeredness. When I was a teenager, I lived in Laguna Beach, and there was all kinds of stimulating things like the Krishnas and the Buddhas and the Jesus people, and everybody was seeking something that was more significant than just existing on this plane.
And I think they lose that conversation. Like, I'll use sarcasm, and they won't get it. I'll say, I'll be at the Olympics in 2 years, and they'll look at me like, and they'll say something that's totally outlandish, and they'll still go, they won't get it because they don't know sarcasm, because they haven't learned conversational eye-to-eye contact.
I think the ability to just sit down with someone without your phone, honestly, like that direct communication where you're not like constantly sidetracked by something else, like being fully there in a conversation.
The younger generation doesn't know how to communicate with people except through texting.
What is something that the younger generation lacks?
What do you think?
I think social interaction instead of social media interaction.
Being outside and exercising instead of having their face in a computer all day.
Manners.
I think the younger generation lacks
a lot of structure and promise of, if you work hard, this is what you will get out of it.
Appreciation for the simple things. I think like being able to come to the beach and just sit and be one with nature, instead of being consumed with technology and everything that's a million miles away. They're not grateful for what's actually in their face.
What is something you think the younger generation lacks?
Well, I guess I don't think much about the younger generation.
Self-confidence. Introspection.
Stick-to-itiveness. They don't have enough focus. They're all over the place. A lot of people say, I'm into problem solving. I'm like, okay, so what problem are you trying to solve? A lot of times they can't answer that. I just think that if you're going to reach some of your objectives in life, you got to be focused. I just see them bouncing all over the bulkhead.
They want everything now.
Their confidence level is a little bit lower, and they're constantly comparing themselves. It's kind of hard when you see people on yachts when you still live in your parents' house.
Well, I think there's not as much of an interest in even like your own family's history, or just like to know how you came to be.
Well, they don't seem to work as hard. They, that's both good and bad. You value things outside of work, which is great. But when you're at work, you leave that at home and put in 100%.
And I feel like they're lost and confused because the modern educational system, they don't teach them what are the important things in life.
What do you think the younger generation lacks?
They may lack some historic perspective. So just because it's done in a particular way now doesn't mean it's necessarily the right way. They could learn from other avenues or other approaches in the past.
I don't think that the younger generation is even capable these days of feeling for other people. They don't know what empathy is. They don't know what compassion is toward their fellow human being.
Being mindful of what you say out your mouth, because it might not be harming you right now, but later on, when it come back around in the universe, it'll affect you later.
I guess I would say compassion.
Maybe caring for other people.
Maybe doing kind acts for others. Communication.
Face-to-face communication.
Their stories are the memes that they've read and the reels that they see and the TikTok reels that they follow along with.
They tend to be more vain because they always have this phone with them and they're always taking pictures themselves and not other people.
So I think like the ability to be without the phone at all. I mean, I'm a victim to it too. I'm 27.
You stick your face in your phone all the time, and you don't give a darn what's going on around you, much less the people around you. So how in the world can you ever learn to feel I know you say feeling comes from the heart. No, you can learn to feel. You can have feelings for other people or compassion toward others. It's lacking.
Well, I see a lot of rude behavior with, example, just brushing by people without saying excuse me.
The younger generation these days lack knowledge, understanding, and awareness, and they're just kind of like, a lot of them are into themselves and so forth.
As long as we are in the lightest of light and we do no harm to others, I think that is ultimately a place where we need to find ourselves to heal as a society. And so I think the younger generation brings that sense of idealism that we all had at one point but lost. But I think to have it sustained and to have it continued, and to know that if you could use the tactics of the past, but with the love and the orientation, I think, of what we see with the millennial generation and generation Y and Z, I think that we'll see that we can be the change that we want to be in the world, and I think that's encouraging.
What is something that you think the younger generation lacks?
Patience. We have too much dopamine-seeking behavior.
I strongly believe that they lost God consciousness, understanding of the absolute truth, and a spiritual connection. Because ultimately, if we have that connection, then we can live in a society where people can understand each other and help each other.
At some point, they should be thinking about why things work the way they do. If I ask them, if you put a rock in the ground and you water it, what happens? The answer is nothing happens. But if you put a seed in the ground and you get a sunflower, or if you get a rose, see, this is telling us that there's information that was put on that seed because it has instructional information that creates the flower, whichever kind. So I think what they're lacking is a simple explanation that points them in the direction of the great creator.
Next question.